Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star. In tonight's AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll get two perspectives on student housing. First, a look at the impact of new high-rise apartment complexes on the west side of the University of Arizona. We'll hear from developers about what they bring to the neighborhood.
3 years ago, the university put out an RFP, a request for proposals for the development of new property, properties on around, the downtown in and around campus, because they felt there was a shortage of housing for students, somewhere to the tune of about 3,000 beds.
Then we'll find out what a longtime West University resident thinks of the new additions.
We had a lot of suggestions and a lot of concerns about traffic and architecture and a variety of other things on that project, but none of those were actually part of the mix that end up in the development plan.
Finally, we'll ask a local architect about 4 buildings that exemplify Tucson's history.
I have to admit I have a deep affection for the mission, as do many Tucsonans, as I've been working on the project for the last 2 decades, preserving San Javier del Bac, which is really the high point of architecture in Tucson, I think.
But first, a look at today's top stories.
Implementation of the next part of the federal Affordable Care Act is quickly approaching, and the debate around the program's future is once again ramping up. The Senate Conservatives Fund, a political action committee which aims to, in its own words, elect true conservatives to the U.S. Senate, is going after Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake. The group is running a radio ad chiding Flake for not signing on to a letter pledging to defund the Affordable Care Act, more commonly known as Obamacare. The Senate Conservatives Fund says it is spending more than $30,000 to run the ad throughout Arizona. 17% of Arizona teens are using tobacco, according to the Pima County Health Department. To help teens quit the habit, the state is rolling out a new smokers hotline aimed at younger smokers. Signal, as it is called, is the only hotline like it in the nation. And at times, the coach who answers the phone may actually be a young adult. The state will not help anyone under the age of 18 get medications to quit smoking, they point out. Health officials estimate 6,000 kids under 18 take up the daily smoking habit each year. It is illegal in Arizona to buy tobacco if you're under 18. And the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is not satisfied with a state environmental impact plan for a new Phoenix bypass. The EPA issued a statement saying the study done by ADOT lacks enough information to make a full finding on the potential environmental impact of the proposed South Mountain Highway. Officials with ADOT are taking issues with the finding, telling Arizona Public Media that the EPA statements contradict state law as well as guidance from the Federal Highway Administration. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Today is the first day of school for the University of Arizona, and Pima Community College students start back to school on Wednesday. Several new student housing complexes are open for this new school year. They're near the University of Arizona. Many are high-rise apartment buildings, and that means they've changed the university area skyline. The neighborhoods are filled with homes old enough to be designated historic. The student housing complexes tower over those older homes. The developers of these complexes say students demand housing with modern amenities, including rooftop pools. Andrea Kelly reports on how these projects may impact the neighborhoods.
The University of Arizona is not a bystander in the process of bringing new housing to the campus. It constructed several new dorms for on-campus housing, but it also asked developers to install privately run student housing complexes nearby. These are higher density than the historic neighborhoods and stand out. One recent addition is the district on 5th Avenue, which opened last year. More are scheduled to open in August and in the fall of 2014. Steve Buss is vice president of a company called Campus Acquisitions, which is developing 2 high-rise apartment complexes near Speedway and Park Avenue to house about 900 students.
3 years ago, the university put out an RFP, a request for proposals for the development of new property, properties on around, the downtown in and around campus, because they felt there was a shortage of housing for students, somewhere to the tune of about 3,000 beds.
Even though the university spearheaded the development process, the new apartments near campus will be privately owned and operated. Bob Kaplan is with Picor Commercial Real Estate in Tucson, which brokers land sales. He specifically works on apartments and says the new complexes are indicative of a new approach to development.
Tucson is not an easy city to develop in, and the U of A, like many universities, is sort of landlocked in an older part of the city where it's hard to find a large enough parcel to develop. For many years, Tucson was sort of anti-development. Other types of developments could pay more money for land than student housing. And then the upzoning of the area just west of campus, and also the change downtown with the streetcar, allowed certain things to come together to build new student housing.
The university wanted the housing, but residents of the West University neighborhood were vocally opposed. They fought the rezoning that allowed a new type of development in their neighborhood of mostly single-family homes. Kaplan says there's a potential impact to the real estate market in the area.
It's going to bring a lot of those renters into these new properties. It may lower rental rates or lower demand for the houses and the duplexes and such that are 10 or 15 blocks away from the university. And it may turn those back into owner neighborhoods where a higher percentage of the people living there are owners and are not people associated with the university. Perhaps there will be more young people that are working downtown and want to lease, but hopefully it'll help strengthen downtown and have more people living in nice neighborhoods near downtown and near the university.
Another housing complex is under construction at the intersection of 4th Avenue and Congress Street. That's being developed by Capstone Development out of Alabama, which has done 70 student housing projects at 60 college campuses. Chad Ismirian, a senior vice president with the company, says more full-time residents will help efforts to revitalize downtown Tucson.
Anytime you bring 500 students to an area, or 500 people that are living 24/7, it's going to bolster, the commercials specifically, and the everything that's surrounding, just in terms of discretionary income and going out and activating the streets. We have a lot of retail on our frontage, as well as all of the development that's on Congress and Broadway. So all of a sudden having 500 downtown residents is really going to activate that.
The complex he's building is split into two parts. One is next to the Rialto Theater, and the other is across Congress Street, nearly on top of the 4th Avenue underpass. Together, they will house 465 students, but Ismirian says they will also serve the neighborhood.
I think our development specifically, in talking, and working with Armory Park, is going to add a component to Armory Park that Armory Park doesn't have, which is, retail. We're working on, our development partner, Jim Campbell, is working on bringing a market to our site, which is one of the things that Armory Park really wants.
But it's not necessarily all good news for nearby residents. Carrie Sylvan is a local land use lawyer who's worked on the third student housing complex slated for the area south of Speedway near Park Avenue.
It's going to cause a market change. And we're starting to hear from neighbors that there are homes that used to be rented to students, some of them owned by outside investors, that they're having trouble leasing and they're having trouble renting. And so there's some vacant properties that are going on right now. One of the responses to that is the market will figure that out. But I think that as we move forward in this region and in our community, we as the development community and the real estate community need to understand that there are consequences and that we should work with the neighborhoods and with the university in particular.
Sylvan says the university could encourage faculty or researchers to move into some of the houses the students vacate in order to live in high-rise student complexes. But Kaplan says the university may benefit in other ways.
Well, having well-managed, nice student housing, walking distance to the university or on the light rail line is a positive environment for students, and it helps with that retention rate. And also having a higher percentage of your freshmen live on campus increases the retention rate. It's well documented. All the universities follow this, in the same way they follow other metrics.
In fact, Bus, the developer of the 2 properties near Speedway and Park Avenue, says the quality and availability of housing can make or break an enrollment decision. And that's another reason the University of Arizona is on board with the influx of high-density student housing right by campus.
It's really a key driver to when a student in high school says, Mom and Dad, where do I want to go to school? Housing is one of the top priorities for them. If there's not, adequate, modern, furnished, technology-driven, amenitized housing on and around the campus, the student would, just as well say, I'm going to go to another packed school.
After the break, we'll get a different perspective by talking to the neighbors who live next to these student housing complexes.
The Obama administration declared today the Syrian government did use poison gas on its citizens, and the U.S. will hold the Assad regime accountable.
After facing sniper fire, UN inspectors arrived at the site of the alleged chemical weapons attack in Syria. We have the latest on the investigation and look at options on the table for a U.S. response.
A massive wildfire near Yosemite National Park has engulfed more than 200 square miles, threatening key sources of water and power for the city of San Francisco. Jeffrey Brown gets the latest on the dangerous blaze.
We continue our March on Washington conversation series as a father and son reflect on what that event has meant to them.
Without those young visions, those young hearts, those young people who were filled with courage, and some oftentimes radical sense of invincibility, I wouldn't have the opportunities I have today.
And we close with the story of Army Staff Sergeant Ty Michael Carter, who received the nation's highest military honor today for his bravery during the war in Afghanistan. That's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
AZ Illustrated Metro is your source for in-depth reporting on the policies that affect our daily lives. And starting September 4th, AZ Illustrated Metro is moving to Wednesdays at 6:30 on PBS 6. AZ Illustrated, committed to Southern Arizona, committed to you.
There's another perspective to the student housing picture. The multi-story apartment complexes catering to students are going into neighborhoods with historic one-story homes. To hear the neighborhood perspective on the influx of student housing complexes, Chris Gans joined me in the studio for an interview. He is president of the West University Neighborhood Association. I asked him to describe his neighborhood, including its relationship to the U of A, plus the average age of the homes. Chris, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Could you start and tell people what your neighborhood's like and how it developed over the years, its age, its relationship to the university?
Our neighborhood has buildings in it from the late 1890s. Majority of the buildings were built in the 1910 to 1940s. They're historic bungalows, a wide variety of styles. It's a really unique neighborhood because of our variety of architectural styles and bungalows. It's a great walking neighborhood. It's located close to 4th Avenue, and you can walk the Main Gate District and downtown. So it's really a delightful neighborhood to live in, and I've lived in the neighborhood for 35 years.
And who's living there right now? What kind of a mix do you have?
We have a mix of from students to just working people, to retirees, to families who have chosen to raise their families in the neighborhood. It's just a wide variety of people. We do have a large student population, which is getting larger by the day, but it is a nice mix of homeowners and renters.
So the district is the student housing building that was built right in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Tell us of how that got started and what you did to work with the developers to make it compatible with the neighborhood.
Well, the city of Tucson created a greater infill incentive district, which allowed that particular development to be built. Unfortunately, in that overlay, there was very little opportunity for neighborhoods to actually engage a developer. It was one required meeting. And so we had a lot of suggestions and a lot of concerns about traffic and architecture and a variety of other things on that project. But none of those were actually part of the mix that end up in the development plan. And so what we have is a district that has traffic problems in the neighborhood and some noise problems.
So traffic and noise are the two biggest problems. What have you done to try to reach a compromise with the developers?
Well, when they first opened, the first developers, first owners, had agreed to some mitigation efforts based on some complaints. The district was red tagged, the pool area was red tagged, there was a lot of noise, a lot of traffic.
Explain to people, in case they don't know what red tag
when
means.
you have a really loud party and it's usually a larger gathering, the police are called and neighbors decide to press charges, and they put an orange tag on, and that means that you can't, if you do it again within 6 months, you get a hefty fine. And so that led to some meetings with the first developer and owner, and they agreed to a number of mitigations. But the city of Tucson did not get those in writing.
Okay, and what kind of mitigations would those have been?
They agreed to do some traffic mitigation, some sound mitigation on the pool area, which faces the neighborhood. They agreed to look at how to bring taxis in off 6th Street. Things like traffic circles, speed humps north of the district, which would help slow some of the traffic that is going and coming from the district. And that sounded like a good start to having it, change the impact on the neighborhood.
But what's happened with that? Where are you right now?
They sold it to a new company called EDR, and the original owners took their $15 million and went to Florida, and EDR was contacted about that, but after a series of conversations with them from the city of Tucson, they decided they would not honor the verbal commitments that the previous owner had made.
Now, they did make at least one offer for you. They have suggested that they would give you some cash up front or whatever to do some of the work yourself as a neighborhood. Is that correct?
No. We had a legal agreement with the first owner, and it was funds to be used for historic preservation and earmarked specifically for historic preservation to be paid over for a period of years. And the new company wanted to use that money to take the pressure off them to have to deal with the impacts that their project has made in the neighborhood. And so we rejected that because we need to preserve our historic homes as much as we can, help low-income people do that as well.
Now, in Andrea Kelly's segment that aired before this, the developers are saying, and some of the people involved in the project are saying, that you may actually have a benefit from having this there, that there will be more owner-occupied homes in the neighborhood because the students won't be there renting as much. How do you feel about that?
Are we talking about the district or just in student housing in general?
Well, either way, the district's the only one open right now, and I know there are others coming along.
I would say talk to the neighbors who still live there, and they are really unhappy. And when the district was built, we lost 5 owner-occupied properties, actually 6, and another 2 are vacant. And so I don't think the impact has translated into something beneficial for the neighborhood. We have a lot more traffic. And I think we have a project that, for most owner-occupied properties, they don't want to live next to something like that.
So as we conclude and wrap up here, what's next for you as a neighborhood?
Well, we're looking at how we can improve the quality of life in the neighborhood. We've been impacted severely by the district, and we will be impacted by the 3 towers, which are going in the main gate area. And I think we're looking at the walkability and infrastructure, and also doing a master planting and street mitigation plan in the neighborhood. So,
well, Chris, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Earlier this year, we aired a PBS show called 10 Buildings That Changed America. It covered buildings that represent historic moments or changes in the country. For a local perspective, we asked architect Bob Vint to give us his take on buildings that helped shape Tucson. He selected them and joined us to explain what each represents.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. It's very nice to be here.
And thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
The first building on your list isn't going to surprise anybody who's watching, I don't think. And it's the oldest European building still standing in Arizona.
In the state of Arizona, the first and the only, or the oldest, obviously, if it's the first, but the San Javier del Bac mission, the foundation of which was laid in 1783. And if you think about it, that's contemporaneous with the start of this country. And the first building on the national program, Buildings That Changed America, the Virginia State Capitol, is contemporaneous with our San Javier mission. You know, Thomas Jefferson was walking the earth while our mission was being built.
Well, talk to us some about the mission. It's been restored over the last few years. I mean, there's always work going on there, and how it plays its part in Tucson.
Yeah, certainly. Well, being the reflection of its time period, the late 18th century, San Javier del Bac is an expression of the Spanish colonial era in Tucson's history, the Catholic religion, of course, and the coming of the Spanish to this part of the world. And I have to admit, I have a deep affection for the mission, as do many Tucsonans, as I've been working on the project for the last 2 decades, preserving San Javier del Bac, which is really the high point of architecture in Tucson, I think. We got off to a very, very good start. We hit a high point, but the mission to me encapsulates all the finest aspects of architecture, the integration of structure, space, form, light, art. It's really the first work of public art in the state of Arizona, and a real community treasure. But it's interesting, the title of this discussion is 4 Buildings That Changed Tucson. And I would challenge that notion a little bit, because I don't think buildings so much as change their society as they reflect their society. So I think we might discuss buildings that express the cultures that produce them, and certainly San Javier del Bac is the expression of Spanish culture and the ultra-Baroque.
Well, that's a good segue really into the next one on your list, which is the St. Philip's Church.
Another church, interestingly enough, built in the 1930s. And this is an ironic situation where you have religion in service to real estate. What happened was the developer, John Murphy, wanted to develop the foothills of Tucson, which everyone said, oh, they're too far from town, the terrain's too rugged, you can't build there. So what did Murphy do? He built a little village center, and he hired Josiah Jostler, one of Tucson's best-known architects to this day, to design St. Philip's Church. But he not only designed the church, he also created a little plaza surrounded by a restaurant, a real estate office, and his design office. So, and this is significant in Tucson's history because it reflects the whole Sun Belt migration, in particular of wealthy Easterners who would winter in Tucson in the 30s. And it's no accident that this is an Episcopal church, the Episcopal Church of St. Philip's in the hills. And so you could do one-stop shopping. You could attend to your spiritual needs, get a meal, buy a lot from Murphy, and have your house designed by Jostler all in one stop around the little placita. So, but more significantly, I think architecturally, is the urban design of this little plaza. The church itself is very interesting as a work of religious architecture. You enter a long nave with a beautiful arched window opening up the Catalina Mountains, sort of, God's creation. But just east of there is a little courtyard, which is a reflection of the Spanish Islamic tradition that we also see at San Javier del Bac. In fact, the whole idea of the oasis, the courtyard, the shelter from the harsh environment, is expressed at St. Philip's beautifully, and it ties into the tradition of San Javier del Bac, although it was designed by a Swiss immigrant architect.
Well, now moving on to the next one is one that I think will surprise people, and that's the Murphy Wilmot Public Library at 5th and Wilmot.
Yes, named for a different Murphy, named for Mayor Lou Murphy, not for John Murphy, the developer. But that building was built in the mid-60s by a very fine architect, Nick Sekeller, and it expresses, in my mind, or reflects the suburban expansion of Tucson that occurred in the post-World War II decades, 50s and 60s, the era we now regard as the mid-century modern era. And it's a perfect expression of that, with its deep overhanging horizontal eaves and its inviting cool entryway, and it's integrating also sculpture and art in the building. I think it's a very fine work of modern architecture that was recently expanded, and the city-county library system did exactly the right thing. They hired the son of the original architect, Dino Sekeller, Nick's son, to design the expansion. And of course, as you would expect, he did a very sympathetic expansion to the original. And as another note of interest, the grandson of the original architect just graduated from the University of Arizona College of Architecture, where he was my student last year, and he is also Nick Sekeller. So the Sekeller family has a great tradition, father, son, grandson, of being architects here in Tucson.
And finally, another one that will probably surprise people is the Integrated Learning Center here at the University of Arizona.
Now this
it's
is a
an
building.
unusual building.
Well, most people wouldn't notice it unless they were students or faculty at the U of A, because the building is underground. The building was designed by Jim Gresham, one of Tucson's finest architects of all times, and a mentor of mine. I worked for Jim for 6 years, about 20 years ago. But Gresham did the unusual thing these days. He did a very understated building. He sunk the building underground in the mall. It's right in the center of the U of A mall, in front of the main library. And by doing so, he preserved the vista to Old Main, and he created a sunken courtyard along the lines of St. Philip's, which has the courtyard, and San Javier also has a courtyard. So he's extending this cultural tradition, but in a very contemporary way. And if you look at the use of materials, he has concrete columns, which have a vaguely Egyptian capital to them, a little reflection of that Middle Eastern culture coming through. And then the patterning of the brick creates a very interesting play of light and shade on the surface that adds another element of richness and visual sheer beauty, I think, which is something that oftentimes is lacking in contemporary architecture, just that thought to the texture of the wall and the shade and shadow.
Well, and the brick is always really important as far as the University of Arizona of trying to tie in the new buildings that come in.
Exactly. I think that's what Gresham achieved here, is he tied in the new with the old in a way that respects both. And there's another connection back to this national program on the 10 buildings that shaped America. A colleague of Gresham's at the American Academy in Rome was Robert Venturi, who designed a home for his mother that's one of the 10 influential buildings that will be featured in tomorrow night's program.
Good. Well, of these lists of buildings, we talk about the impact on the city. Obviously, Santa Fe's impact is in tourism in many ways, as well as the religion thing. It's an iconic thing.
It is a cultural icon, yes. Well, I think each of these buildings both expresses its time and then continues to be influential into the future. And I honestly think architecture is more of a manifestation, a physical manifestation of the society that produces it. So I would, again, if I were to entitle the program, it wouldn't be 4 buildings that changed Tucson. It would be how Tucson's history is expressed in these 4 buildings.
There's more information about each of these buildings on our website, azpm.org. This segment on important architecture in Tucson was inspired by the PBS program, 10 Buildings That Changed America. You can watch that show and others in their entirety online. Just go to video.pbs.org. To comment on any of today's stories or keep up with the latest news, go to our website, azpm.org. I'm Maria Parham. Thanks for watching.